This is David Lewis Williams, an archaeologist at the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. Professor Lewis Williams has studied the entoptic imagery of rock and cave art created by diverse cultures, from Paleolithic times to the present. The peoples who have written their dreams upon the rock might have done so during an altered state of consciousness. North American Indians call it a spirit or vision quest, induced by various forms of deprivation, auditory driving with drums and rattles, flickering lights, hyperventilation, or hallucinogens.
So there's no doubt that shamans make this sort of imagery. I think that there are some kinds of trance experience where the imagery is projected rather like a slide or film show before one's eyes.
People try to make sense out of what they see. Geometric forms such as grids, spirals, zigzags, dots, and curves. But the sense they make is dependent upon cultural sensibilities.
Well, we all seem to be wired pretty much the same. And it doesn't matter whether we're having dreams, fantasies, thoughts, or hallucinations. The brain is the same for all of us. It seems to receive and process and store and retrieve information in the same way.
Ronald K. Siegel is a professor of psychopharmacology at UCLA's School of Medicine. He's also the author of Fire in the Brain.
Some of the geometry has to do with the way in which the visual system is arranged. For example, very often we'll see horizontal lines going across the visual field, and these come from folds in the tissue around the eye. We very often will see lights or colors pulsating, and this is because of the pulsation of the blood vessels in the retina behind the rods and the cones. You may see the face of a loved one, and it may be a very different loved one than I see. But my argument is that we'll see it on the same screen. We'll see it in the same geometric arrangement. We'll see it with the same colors, the same movement patterns. Those things are fixed by the projector that we all inhabit, that is our brain and our visual system.
Entoptic images at rock art sites are usually accompanied by depictions of mythological creatures, half human, half beast, an animistic netherworld familiar to Swiss psychologist Carl Jung as the icons of the unconscious. This is the beginning of stage 3 of trance-induced hallucinations, a sometimes terrifying blend of iconic images with the sensation of being inside a rotating tunnel, immersed in the vortex. Ron Siegel.
We worked with a group of Indians in the High Sierra Madre Range in central Mexico that had been isolated since the time of Cortez, and they still spoke Nahuatl, which is the Aztec language. And when they started having recognizable hallucinations of people and places, what did they see? They saw deer, they saw corn, they saw other Indians. My subjects here in North America, when given the exact same drug, which was peyote, and the exact same dosage, they also saw recognizable landscapes and images. But what did they see? They saw freeways, and they saw automobiles, and they saw houses. They did not see deer, the kind of flora and fauna that is common to the Sierra Madre, because they're not around it. But they saw it in the same vivid, supersaturated slideshow type of presentation that reminded them of Mickey Mouse type of animation, where you get, with animated movies, you get very supersaturated images. That seems to reflect something about the way in which the brain stores these images and retrieves them, because when the Indians drew out the pictures for us of what they saw, they were drawing cartoons.
One of the oldest forms of energy for Aboriginal people are rocks, and we honor that kind of energy.
This is Linda Jane, a lawyer and a First Nations Cree.
When we see a spirit, oftentimes in our lodges, they're little round balls, and they're a color, so that they can manifest themselves being visible to the eye, but they don't have to manifest themselves that way. And when we call back the spirits from the other world, we're also utilizing the energy from the rocks, the old energy and the wise energy, the wisdom that is gathered in these rocks over the ages.
Are you saying that the rock itself generates energies?
Our belief system is that rocks have energy, and they have one of the oldest and one of the most potent forms of energy.
So if the rock itself might be like a device to communicate with?
I don't know.
I'm traveling across the Mojave Desert in Southern California. My guide is Dr. David Whitley, a former professor of archaeology at UCLA. His four-wheel drive is maneuvering towards Surprise Tank, a rock art site filled with petroglyphs, ancient images carved in stone, some as much as 12,000 years old. Dr. Whitley has been investigating the archaeology of the Vision Quest. Recently, he made an exciting discovery.
You look at shamans all over the world. Quartz happens to be a very important component of their ritual kits, their ritual paraphernalia. But the question that then comes is, why, if quartz is the most common mineral on Earth, are shamans everywhere including it in their toolkits? And what we've discovered is that quartz was being selected because of its triboluminescent qualities. This is a characteristic of the rock. You take two quartz stones into a dark room and you rub them or strike them together, a photon flash will be created. On vision quests, shamans would take white quartz rocks. They would strike them together, as our Native American informants have told us, so that the power that was in the rocks would go out of the rocks and enter the shaman's body and enhance his own potency.
We know that strain within the Earth's crust, it does not have to be very deep, can produce a kind of pushing effect on certain kinds of crystals.
Dr. Michael Persinger is the director of the Neuroscience Laboratory at Laurentian University in Sudbury, Ontario.
If you pressure crystals, you can generate electric fields, magnetic fields, and probably other fields and combinations about which we know little at this point. As you know, when you put pressure on quartz, the piezoelectric effect, which will generate radio frequencies, for example, and even some types of heat and sound, can be produced. So if individuals were in this area and were exposed to the electric, magnetic, and perhaps physically sounding fields that would be generated by small transient pressures in this rock, you'd expect to have significant attribution to these areas. They may be holy sites or special sites, positive sites, particularly if the experiences were good and pleasant. The individuals would also have their temporal lobes and their occipital regions stimulated, so you'd expect that primary perceptual forms would emerge, such as the spirals and the lattice formations, and certain primary features that are generated when you stimulate the temporal lobes of the brain, such as the face, the sort of the outline of a face or of a hand. These experiences would be common, and you'd find them all over the world in all cultures, because the human brain is remarkably similar across all cultures and across all time.
Diary, July 1998. Betty's house near Vancouver. A standard slice of suburbia on the side of a big hill. Nothing to distinguish this place as unusual. Needs a coat of paint, maybe. But is it haunted? All I have is Betty's report.
When I first came here, the minute I stepped in the house, there was something about it I didn't like. Some bad feeling, and I don't know if I ever really felt that before. My parents were thinking of buying it, and I told them, don't buy that house. There's something wrong with that house. I don't know how to explain it.
This is Christine Stefanik. As a youngster, she lived in the house next door to Betty's. She thinks her old house is also home to a presence.